Today, a lot of us have the same tools, from the same amp sims to the same samples to the same plugins. And while it's great to have access to fantastic plugins that don't break the bank, if you don't try anything new, it's easy for your mixes to just sound like everybody else's. And in this clip, Lawrence details the importance of going down the tone rabbit hole to create something completely unique to give your mix the edge over the competition. Check it out and enjoy.
These are my main guitars. Let's disregard this just for a second. So this is what was recorded, like a left, a right, and a center. So I wanted different sounds for those. Bloodbath has done, I think, 2 albums with more or less kind of a old school Stockholm kind of HM2 vibe. But that guitar sound hasn't really been this the standard for Bloodbath throughout the years. They've had many different types of guitar sounds, which are not super focused on the HM2. And this album, they didn't actually want it to be an HM2 sounding album. They wanted it to be more sounding a little bit more American, if you say, instead of Swedish death metal. I know the guys were they were like listening to a lot of D-Side, Obituary, Morbid Angel, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so this album is heavily influenced by like Florida death metal, basically, and
real metal.
Yeah, Cannibal Corpse as well, and stuff like that. You know,
we're being gatekeepers today. I love it.
Yeah, I knew I needed to create a brand new like guitar sound, and I just wanted to have a super high gain sound that didn't sound like an HM2, but I still, when I had achieved that, and that is this left and right tracks. When I had achieved that, I found that I was missing some sizzle that I like, you know, from the HM2, and I very often blend in some HM2 just because to get that sizzle underneath, so the picks aren't that dry, you know, because when you play riff like it is here, it can be, and I mean Thomas is such a great player. Those are so clean, those picks, that you want some dirt behind them. So kind of seeing it like when you're adding saturation or stuff to drums, you know, just blend in something below the guitars to make them to give them more vibe, basically. So that's the way I used HM2 on this album. This guitar sound, the main guitar tracks.
I should clarify, Lawrence, just in case you guys weren't at the Q&A, HM2 is the Boss Heavy Metal 2 pedal. It's got, here we go. Show them the settings so they know how to get it, so it's documented for eternity.
I don't know if you can see this, but they're all these are on full. That's the way it was done in the beginning of the 90s. Entombed, well, they were called Nihilist first. I think the bass player or the guitar player or something. One of the guitar players from Entombed of Nihilist, he wasn't in Entombed later on, but I think he had this pedal and he did this and they thought it sounded cool. So it is stuck with the whole Stockholm death metal sound ever since, actually. So they're all on full and it sounds super abrasive and just full on. And you can only play one style of riff while playing with this, because it's like a fuzz, basically, and you look at the string and it makes a noise.
It makes a riff.
Yeah, it makes a riff. That's what it does. So a lot of open riffs and a lot of one string. This sounds absolutely awesome.
I hear the price of HM2 pedals since our Q&A has gone up by 2x on a reverb.
They're really popular, and actually there's so many clones now that sound really great as well. We just like to use this because nothing beats the original in the studio. It has a great compression sound to it. It's just awesome.
Original true metal, clones folk metal.
But I had such a fun time, you know, reamping these guitars, because they recorded DIs and they had a Kemper sound, which was just like a generic distorted sound, and it was like, yeah, sounds cool, but it needs something way cooler for the album. I was trying this thing that I hadn't really done that much before, not in this way, is like using a preamp and going into the effects return of an amp. I had done it before, like when people brought like Sansamp racks and stuff like that. But this time I was like, let's try all my pedals and see which ones work great as a preamp. And this one, I've had this pedal and never had a use for it because it sounds absolutely awful going into the input. It's called Metal from line 6. It's just, it has these settings that are called like metal, pulverize, and insane. It's actually obviously on pulverize now. That's what I used on the album. And this goes, the guitar DI goes into this and then into the effects return. And it sounds bloody awesome with a good, just with the power amp and a good IR or a cab. Sounds absolutely awesome. So that's.
You want to hear something crazy about line 6? I'm not allowed to disclose this. He was working on some new Linkin Park or like some Linkin Park stuff. I don't know if it's new or whatever, but he said that all their old stuff is just like a pod, like the Bean pod. Like that's their guitar tone on all those old records, like Meteor and all that stuff. And like that's what they use. So you trash line 6 all you want. There it is. Here we see it today. Line 6 is king.
They're awesome. They I don't know why they get a bad rep. Maybe these spider amps, whatever they did, maybe they lost the plot a bit. But in the beginning, the pods were fucking awesome. I used them as well. And then this is just a joke looking at it. Except
it's got the pulverized setting, which isn't a joke.
No, it's not a joke. But anyway, it weighs like hell. So, but this is kind of following in the tradition of using a pedal that wasn't even considered a good pedal, like the HM2. It was just like, what's this shit? And then it just worked in another way in which it wasn't intended to work. It's the same with this. So it kind of felt like, yeah, cool. I guess that's a death metal way, just finding something that shouldn't work and make it work, So that's the left and right guitars. And then I found that the Metal Zone also was great.
No way, dude.
Yeah, that was also great doing that way. It has such good EQ, right? You can do pretty much anything. So this straight into the effects return also sounds really good. So I put this on the center guitar. So that's a different, just to make it, and I try to kind of match them kind of like a good guitar sound the best I could to sound good together. And it's just more fun to use another tone in the center. So that's in the center. And then the ones that I muted here is the HM2s that we talked about.
This is like a master class in how to use unpopular guitar pedals to absolutely create mind-bendingly incredible guitar tones that are sick. I hope they're paying attention to this because it's really, really brilliant. Because again, these are moves like we troll Metal Zone pedal. I have 3 of them in here that I use as door stops. But here we are. You can't argue with these guitar tones on this session. They are sick.
Yes, but you should, if you want to find something that doesn't sound like everybody else, I could use the same plugins that are popular now, and I can use whatever emulator is the best thing now. Is it a Kemper? Is it the Axe? Is it the Quad Cortex? But if you want to create something that nobody else has, you have to go down the rabbit hole and just try everything and try to make something that shouldn't work, because that makes it interesting to listen to, because the listeners have never heard that guitar sound before. Because I doubt on a death metal album somebody has taken the Metal in pulverized mode and put it in the effects return. I don't think so.
I'm literally queuing up Reverb right now to go buy all of them. So no.
Anyway, and then we get to the HM2, and that is it's a lot lower in volume, but it just adds that fizz. And we're going to listen to it, obviously.
Lawrence, I'm sorry. One question Joao was asking, what amp was you might have said this, but what amp was the HM2 actually plugged into?
The HM2 wasn't, okay, here's a cool thing. The HM2 wasn't plugged into an amp. I sent the DI straight into the HM2 and into my DAW. So it's just the pedal that I recorded. And then I used an amp, the Fortin Cali I used as a kind of the clean amp, because you need to have a sound. These usually work really well in like a slightly crunchy tone, like not super clean, not super distorted, just a little bit of crunch. That's when these sound the best. And in this case, I used the Fortin Cali as kind of the clean amp. The crunchy amp for this. With the other distortion pedals, I actually sent them through PV JSX that I have, just using the power amp for that and just going into the computer.
You're like an Impulse with a load box. Which load box are you using?
I have a 2 notes now, which work really well. But the great thing is, I think I hadn't bought it yet when I did the reamping for this. because the JSX has a line send out, which sounds awesome. And that amp, for some reason, I think it's like when that's connected, you can use it even without a cab. So it doesn't destroy the amp. So that's a cool thing with that amp. The rhythm guitar sound is comprised of these three. And here are the main left and right. So that's what it sounds like without an IR, without a cap. And the HM2 is going to be even more disgusting, I guess. Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah. And then the metal zone, center guitar. RIP headphone users. Sorry. Let's check out the main left and right with the IRs. So this is a Cali cabs, where I found that this combination suited the sound really well. So these are obviously vintage 30s Mesa cabs that I'm sure you've heard all about. So I tried a bunch of different IRs, some of my own, some that Daniel's done, some other manufacturers, and I like this the best.